All right, so on this planet called Earth, okay, envision a couple 100 million years ago, this animal known as a mammal first appeared, okay? So now, about 300,000 years ago from today, humans first appeared on Earth. Humans are a type of mammal, okay? So there were a bunch of different species of humans, but of those species, there were Homo sapiens, which is us. We won the game, so we get to stay. So Homo sapiens, us, we discovered how to do a lot of cool stuff. Okay, we got fire. We figured out how to make tools. We used tools. We figured out how to farm. Okay, and yeah, we ended up making civilizations. Everybody living together. And all this development's really cool and awesome. But it also polluted the earth. Okay, so now envision this a couple thousand years ago or whatever. Humans figured out how to use electricity. Sweet. Electricity is awesome. I love electricity. We use it for all kinds of things. But you can't just walk outside and grab electricity. You can maybe look at lightning, but if you touched it, you'd probably get pretty hurt. Anyways, so a bunch of free thinkers, figured out, they used their big brains and they discovered that they could use fossil fuels like coal to create electricity. But it turns out burning all these fossil fuels was really bad for the environment. Okay? Fact time. According to the UN, fossil fuels account for over 75% of global greenhouse gas emissions and 90% of greenhouse gas emissions, making them the largest contributor to global climate change. All right, sweet. So there's a lot of bad things that can be caused from climate change, as you may know, such as hotter temperatures, severe storms, increased drought, rising oceans, loss of species, food scarcity, increased health risks, and also poverty and displacement, just to name a few things. They are also expected to cause an additional 250,000 deaths a year between 2030 and 2050, all because of these bad things that happen from climate change. So what do we do? Do we keep burning fossil fuels? Do we ban fossil fuels? Well, we can't exactly just ban fossil fuels because, look at this map. Clearly, we're still pretty reliant on fossil fuels to generate electricity. We need electricity. We can't just, go without it. Otherwise, we'd all probably die. I don't want to exist in Arizona without air conditioning. Sweet. All right, so what should we do about it then? Is there any alternatives? Well, there happens to be a couple. Alternative energies is what they're called, and there's two really popular ones. Okay, it's renewable energy and nuclear energy. So there's pros and cons to both. I'm just gonna lay them out and I'll let you figure out which is better for yourself. Let's start with renewable energy. Renewable energy is energy from renewable sources. There's three main types: solar power, hydropower, and wind power. Solar power is power generated from the sun. Hydropower is power generated from flowing water. And wind power is power generated from wind. There's also two minor types: geothermal and biomass, which I will not cover as much in this video. Geothermal is energy produced by heat within the earth, like vents, and biomass is energy produced from burning organic materials, which, burning stuff is going to create a lot of CO2 emissions, so biomass is out. All right, so what's so cool about renewable energy? First off, it's renewable. Sweet. So it's basically unlimited, unless the sun gets blocked out or we lose wind or something like that. It's infinitely exploitable. Wind power, there's also pretty good things about them as well, besides the fact that they're unlimited. Wind power apparently improves air quality. Hydropower apparently helps with flood control and freshwater management, and solar power is pretty clean. Yeah, sweet. Also, renewable energy farms boost the local economies they're located in, and in recent years, the price for renewable energy has become very affordable. So it's pretty cheap. Yeah, sweet. So if it's cheap and infinite, why don't we just switch to that and, cut out fossil fuels entirely? You may wonder to yourself. Well, firstly, renewable energy is location dependent. You're not going to get a lot of electricity generated from a solar farm located in Washington, because there's, it's blocked out by clouds and the trees. It's just not a good location. So you have to think about where you put these farms at. Secondly, the land requirement. So solar farms and wind farms require a ridiculous amount of space to generate however much energy they need. So it is worth noting about the land space thing. that from a study done by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, that it showed that it would take up less than 1% of the land in the United States to generate all the electricity we need using just renewable energy. However, this is all theoretical, and I don't know who these experts are, but if that's true, then that's pretty awesome, because that's less land required than fossil fuels. So that'd be really cool. But let's just do a little bit of critical thinking. Even if the total land use for renewable energy was 1% of the United States, is it really efficient when there's another energy source out there that takes up a fraction of the space to generate the same amount of energy? I don't think that's too efficient. Anyways, let me know what you think. Another con for renewable energy is the waste it produces. So solar panels and wind turbines have a lifespan of about 15 to 20 years, and after that they need to get replaced. What happens to the parts that can't be recycled? They end up in landfills. So even if the energy is clean, it's not very clean for the environment, because we're just throwing all this stuff into landfills and just making the earth dirtier. Yeah, so it's not very clean. Finally, renewable energy is pretty disruptive to the local ecosystems. Wind turbines are responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of birds. They're threatening extinction for certain species of birds of prey. Solar farms threaten the extinction of desert tortoises, and they also literally set birds on fire. Also, hydroelectric power plants, we get those by damming rivers, so all the aquatic life in the area is kind of threatened from that. Sweet, so that's renewable energy. Think about the pros and the cons, and now we're going to talk about nuclear energy. So when you hear the word nuclear, it sounds pretty scary, but it's not actually too scary. Nuclear energy is energy derived from the nuclei of atoms. There's 3 known techniques to capture this energy. It's nuclear fission, nuclear fusion, and radioactive decay. Nuclear fission is the most common type. Nuclear fusion and radioactive decay are still experimental and under development. So why is this energy considered as a potential alternative? Well, for starters, it's clean, 0 emissions. It has extremely low waste. It uses a fraction of the land that is required for fossil fuels or renewable energy, and it is also extremely reliable and efficient. Nuclear energy has a lot of economic benefits as well. In 2024, it was directly responsible for employing 74,000 people and indirectly supporting 256,000 jobs while contributing $64 billion to the US GDP. So it's pretty great. Now looking at all this nuclear energy, it seems really cool. Why don't we just do that? Well, there's also cons to nuclear energy. Firstly, the amount of money it takes to start it up. It's less funded than renewable energy, so it's pretty expensive initially to get started. Next, the raw material for nuclear fission is uranium, which is not a renewable resource, so you have to mine for it, and there's a finite amount, which leads to our next con, which is the waste produced is radioactive, because we're using radioactive materials to do nuclear fission. So even if the waste is very low, it is radioactive. And also the byproduct of nuclear fission is plutonium, which is a ingredient in nuclear weapons. That's a thing, okay? However, this con only applies to nuclear fission. With nuclear fusion, you could actually do it without radioactive materials. You can do nuclear fusion on hydrogen, for example, and the byproduct wouldn't be radioactive, but it's still experimental and under development. So for the time being, we need to think about it from nuclear fission standpoint, okay? Final con is catastrophic accidents. Most people have heard of Chernobyl and Fukushima. These accidents have been responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of people and also has lasting environmental impacts. So nuclear energy is no joke, but it is also, there's cons and there's pros to everything. So which one is better? It's up for you to decide. For me, looking at both the pros and the cons, I don't understand why we can't just use both. We could use renewable energy in areas where it would be, good to do so. We'll put solar farms in sunny areas, wind farms in windy areas, and then we can supplement the rest of the energy with nuclear power plants, and that would basically, eliminate the need for fossil fuels. I don't know, that's just one solution I can think of. Yeah, that's it. This has been my video.